Hello there. In this video, we're going to talk about Aria. Now, what's an Aria? Well, it's an HTML used to make web pages more accessible. Well, the number one rule for Aria, can you guess what it is? Well, the number one rule is that don't use Aria, right? Well, if there's an HTML that will get you the behavior you're looking for, then don't use that HTML element. So what does that mean? Well, it means that there are HTML elements that don't need Aria, that come with the accessibility features by default. For instance, there are interactive elements, keyboard or focus elements, which already are keyboard focusable, have proper roles, and are announced correctly by the screen readers. These include buttons, anchor tags, inputs, select, text area, label, form, field set, legend, details, and summary. So if you use these elements instead of your custom element, for instance, if there's a button requirement for your web page, and instead of using a div, if you use button, then you don't have to give role attribute to it. It already has the features that you need for it to make it accessible. Other elements are structural and semantic elements. These convey meaning to the assistive technology. For instance, your headings, your navigations, your header, footer, main, section, article, aside, your list items, table, caption, and your table elements. So only use Aria when building custom components or when native elements can't meet the needs. So the very first thing is that when you're writing HTML, ask yourself, can I use a default HTML element? If it's a button, use button. If it's a select, then use select. But if for some reason you can't use it, and you definitely need to use a custom element because you require a custom feature, then go ahead and use it, but then you'll have to provide it an Aria attribute. And for that, you need to know what are different Aria attributes available and when to use them. And that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to start with giving a very basic example of the common issue that we can have on our website, and then we'll go into more detail of what are different types of Arias we can use. So let's take a look at this website. On this website, I'm going to run the AxDev tools, and we already learned how to do that on the last video. And I'm going to run a full page scan, and we'll see what are the issues related to the Aria attribute, and then how we can fix that for accessibility. So here you can see that it says links must have discernible text, right? And if I take a look, this is the element which has the issue. So how do we fix that? Now we're going to go and find this particular element, and then we'll go ahead and fix that. Let's do that. So here we go, search for that element. Here's that element. And as you can see that this particular element, so let's go ahead and find that element. I'm going to see, this is the element, right? So there are a couple of things that we can do. Well, number one, I see that there is a heading over here, right? Which is the name of the website, which is this. Ideally, this should also be clickable. So if I just move this guy inside of this, that solves my problem, because that means that this anchor tag has a text inside that describes what it does. And that should solve the problem. Let's run a scan and see if that works. So let's run the scan and see. First, let me refresh the page. Go in there, AxDev tools. And this time I'm only going to scan this part. So we'll use the partial page scan. In fact, let's just click on the partial page scan. And then I'm going to, okay, it's not allowing me to, oh, it does. Okay, great. Excellent. And then scan it. Okay, great. Excellent. We solved that problem, right? So that's one way to do it. Second way to do it is, if you really can't move this heading inside of it, you can give it an aria-label. So I'm going to give it an aria-label, aria-label, and whatever it is, let's say it is the evently site logo. That's it. So that's what the screen reader is going to read if we go ahead and did that. So let's try that. I'm going to refresh the page. And I'm going to only do the scan of that part. So partial scan, select that, and then scan it. There it is. It's cleared. Excellent. So those are the two ways to basically fix that. And if you're wondering why we have this alt empty over here, that's because it's a presentation image. So you can give an empty alt. Now let's go ahead and use our screen reader to see what it reads for this particular element. Okay, so I'm going to press the command plus F5 on my iMac.
Voiceover on
It's
Chrome.
turned on.
Index. Evently visited. Link. Entering index. Evently bootstrap template web content. Visited. Link. Evently site logo. Banner.
Right.
You are currently on a link.
So you can see that it's actually reading that,
on
right?
a banner. In spanner. Index. Evently bootstrap template. Web link. Bootstrap made. Footer. You are heading left. Visited. Link. Evently site logo. Banner. You are currently on a link. To click this link, press Control, Option, Space. Voiceover off.
Okay, so as you saw that when I go ahead and tab it, it actually reads out the information from the aria label, which is great. This is what we wanted. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the other aria labels. So when using the aria label, we should add the appropriate role attributes. You can use roles like button, dialog, list box, tab, combo box, etc. to define what your custom components does. So let's say that you really need to create a button, which is a custom button, with using the custom element like a div or a span or any other elements beside the button tag. Then you need to give it a proper tab index, a proper role, and aria label. So tab index 0, which means that this will be tabbable. Okay. Now, what's going to happen is that in case if you would like the screen reader to announce a particular change in the content of your element, you can use aria-live or aria-atomic. This will help the screen readers pick up the real-time content updates without requiring a page reload. So let's say here in this development, if the form submitted successfully, the text of this changes, then the screen reader is going to go ahead and announce that for you. Then you have aria-expanded, true or false, which is used for components that can expand or collapse, like accordions, drop downs, or disclosures. So in an accordion, you will go ahead and use the aria-expanded false initially when it's closed, and with JavaScript, like over here with button set attribute aria-expanded true, you can actually go ahead and set the aria-expanded to true and then remove the attribute hidden from that particular element, which is this one. So this is your the header of that particular accordion, and this is the content of that accordion. So initially this will be hidden, this aria-expanded will be false, and then you can go ahead and turn this to true and remove this attribute when it's closed. Then you have aria selected, true or false. This is used to indicate which item in a tab list or menu is currently selected. So as you can see that generally this is used for tabs. Ideally you will give role of tab list to the tab, and then to each tab you will give a role of tab, and then aria selected to true for the ones that are selected, and the aria selected to false for the tab that's not selected. Then you can give aria controls, panel 1, panel 2, and then you're going to link it, use the same name as you've given to the ID of the content of that particular tab. And then you give this a role of tab panel and then aria-labeled by tab 1. And then with JavaScript, you can actually set the attribute to false or set the attribute true depending on which tab is selected, and you set the attribute to hidden empty or remove the attribute in case if that particular tab content is supposed to be shown. So let me give you an example. So here, as you can see, this is the tab, right? So if you inspect element, here you can see that this has a role of tab, and then the main container has a role of tab list. This li has a role of presentation, and then you have aria selected to true because this particular tab is selected. And if I open this one and this one, and the moment I select this one, you can see aria selected to true, and this one becomes false using JavaScript. And each one of them have a role of tab, and then you also have a tab index, right? So this one has a tab index of -1, which means this will not be tabbable. But this one, we go ahead and remove the tab index from that. So these two will not be tabbable because currently user is on this one. So with JavaScript, we are actually changing the tab index. We'll come to, I'll go ahead and explain different tab indexes to you in the upcoming videos. Okay, so those are the attributes usually used for tabs. Then you have aria checked, true or false. So this is usually used for a custom checkbox. So for some reason, if you can't use a regular checkbox, then you can create your own checkboxes. And similar to tab, you'll give it a role of checkbox, and aria check to false, tab index to 0, which means it's tabbable, and then you give it an ID, and using JavaScript you toggle the state of the aria checked based on whether it's selected or not, checked or not. Then you have aria pressed. This is used for usually a toggle button, like switches, bold italic toggles in the editor, for example. And there we use the aria pressed, false initially when it's not selected, and then aria pressed to true using JavaScript when it is selected. Next one is aria-label. So you use aria-label to assign invisible programmatically readable label to an element, best for icons only, button, or custom control where there's no visible text. We use the aria-label in one of the examples I showed you initially also, where we had this particular element, and this image that we had was only for presentation and there was no text inside of it. So you went ahead and used the aria-label over here, as you can see, right? This is the one. Now, there are scenarios where there are other scenarios where you will use it. For instance, icon buttons. Sometimes you have modals where there is no text for that close button. It's just the icon. And that's when you can use the aria-label. Okay, so you can so there are two options, like I said, inside of this button, either use the aria-label if it doesn't have the text inside of it, or if you don't want to use this, then just add a text and just hide it using some SR only styles, which means it's only visible to screen readers, that text, and it's not visible to users. So both options are available. Either you use text inside of it, which is hidden to the regular users but not to screen readers, or you use the aria-label, whichever works for you. Okay, so here the screen readers will announce close or button. I gave you an example of how screen reader was announcing that, and you use it when there's no visible text and you want to add short, meaningful label directly. Then you have the aria-labelledby, which is used to reference another element. Usually, if you just use label with an ID and give that, okay. Now this is used when the label already exists elsewhere. Well, this is used usually when there is a visual label that exists already exists elsewhere, and used for grouped inputs. So here you can use aria-labelledby, give it the value of the ID of that particular label. So this will be linked to this one. If you remove aria-labelledby, you must still associate the label with the input. The very simple way and natural way to do it is just use a label, use a for attribute, and give it the same value as the ID of the input. But for some reason, if you can't use that, then you need to use the aria-labelledby, which is this approach. Okay. So when you use this for attribute on the label, it links it to the input with the matching ID. So screen reader will announce like this. Screen reader will when the user goes to this input and taps into this input, it's going to announce whatever you write inside of the label, which is card number. Sometimes some of the forms don't have labels, but ideally, as per accessibility, labels should always be visible to the user. Now, this is preferred over aria-labelledby for basic label input pairs, as I already explained to you. So when do you use the aria-labelledby over for? Well, first is if you need to reference the text from multiple elements. Let's say there are multiple elements who have the same label, or if you have custom widget where label plus for can't be used. So if you haven't used the label element, if you use something else like a div or something, and you want to create your own custom solutions, that's when you're going to use the aria-labelledby. Okay, then you have the aria-describedby, which is used to link an element to an additional content that explains or clarifies, like a helper text, error message, or field hints. So for example, here, as you can see, right here, you say we'll never share your email with anyone else. Is like a helper text. You give it an ID and you put the value of the ID inside of the aria-describedby inside of the input. Okay, so how a screen reader will announce when you go to that input element, it'll say email, because that's an email input element. Edit text, I'll say whatever you have put inside of this email hint. We'll never share your email with anyone else. So when do we use it? We'll use when you want to add supporting information beyond the main label. It's not a replacement. It'll still read the email. And if you want to, of course, there will be scenarios you're not going to put everything in the label, right? So this is label, but you want some helper text. So you will put helper text with the help of the aria-labelledby. So you'll announce email and then edit text and then this information. Okay, so just a few more examples, just a recap of what we discussed. So these attributes, aria attributes, communicate states clearly by using attributes like aria-expanded for toggles and accordion, aria-selected, aria-checked, aria-pressed, aria-disabled to indicate non-interactive components. Sometimes, you want to disable an element, so then that's when you use the aria-disabled and set that value to true. Link labels and descriptions, you use aria-label for labeling, aria-labelledby for referencing on other elements, aria-describedby to provide extended instructions for help. Okay, thank you very much.